Hey folks, welcome back to Light Source Engraving. I'm your host Patrick, as usual. And if it's your first time here, thank you so much for stopping by and checking us out. Today I've got a fun video for you, I think. If you're in the market for a fiber laser and you're wanting to do large items, you're going to need a 400mm lens and you're going to need a laser source powerful enough to drive that. So you'll be looking at likely a 100, 120 watt. I have a 120 watt fiber laser with a 400mm lens on it, and today we're going to do this cross. The total length of the engraving is going to be roughly the space between my hands. That is 410 millimeters. So in inches we have 430 millimeters, 17 inches. So you're going to ask, how do I get 430 millimeters out of a 400 millimeter lens? Well, when you do your core file, you end up getting an additional area to your lens. Now, it's going to push it to its limits, and at those outer boundaries, you're going to lose power and could have some warping. But if you test, you'll know exactly where that limit is. And mine is about 18 inches. It starts to want to warp and fade out. So at 17 inches, I'm going to be okay. So I know this will come out just fine and we'll be good to go. But the rule of thumb is you get about 10% added on to your lens size by doing your core file. So if you have 200 lens, you'll get about 220 out of it. If you have 300 lens, you get about 330, and a 400 lens about 440, roughly. So that's kind of the rule of thumb. So at 430, I'm still in good shape and I get a decent result. So let me show you how I'm going to set up this file, and we'll just go right into Illustrator. I'm going to use Illustrator because with Illustrator you can do text vertically. It's going to have vertical text down the center here, and then we'll have dates on the sides. So let's set that up real quick, and then we'll go to LightBurn, finish that up there, and get this thing burning. Okay, so we're here in Illustrator, and the first thing I'm going to do is make a 30mm wide rectangle, and that is going to be 430 millimeter tall. There's 429 and 428, 33. Okay, that's close enough. Then the next rectangle is 30mm tall and 310mm wide. So there's those two. So let's center those up. And that's our basic shape for our cross for the engraved area. Now I do know that there is another 80 that is not going to be engraved to allow it to go in the ground, and another 50 that will be the spike part. So if we do another 80 and then another 50 down to 130, this will give us roughly our total length. And just to make sure that I know exactly what that is, we'll just move this node over and move this node over. That kind of gives us lets us know that we don't want our text down here. But that's roughly the shape, and now we can proceed to do our text. So the first thing I'm going to do is start typing the first date, 11/16/40, 11/16/1940. Now that we have that there, I'm going to hit Control A to select all the text, and then let's make it bigger. About a 25 size font across here should work. However, that is extending over too far, so we are going to have to lower the font size. And I think this will look better if it's in Arial bold italic. Now let's see. That changes this font size, and actually that's perfect. Now we can do our next set of text, and it should start with the correct size. 07, 03, 2023. And we can put this. Now we have our text. For the horizontal part, now we'll see the vertical text. So you come over to your text menu, right click it, and do vertical type tool. And see, this is something you can't do in LightBurn. And we want this to say, in all caps, JUNIOR, and a space, SWIGE, oops, all caps, SWIGER. Now what's going to limit our font size here is going to be our W. So if this is centered, that can be a little bit wider. Let me grab this and center. Make sure that's centered. Just move our text back. That looks pretty good, except if we put a little more space between the letters, we can make it a little bit taller. So what we can do is go to character, and right here we can change the tracking for the characters, so we can have them with more space in between them. By adjusting that, get more space. That O is centered right in that cross piece, so I think that looks good. So that's roughly going to be our design. That covers most of the space. I think the letters are spaced out, looking pretty good. This W is kind of off the side a little bit, so I'm going to move that so that the W is more centered. See how that looks, and it kind of makes it all look a little off center. So I'm going to move that W back over and decrease this font 1 millimeter. Yeah, looks like we will be going with that. So at this point, what I'm wanting to do is make it so I can just copy and paste this right into LightBurn. And when I do that, it's not going to come in at the proper size. And I know that, so it's no big deal. So we can just go ahead. It doesn't matter about where those are now. What I want to do is just object, expand. Just want to do that again, expand. I'm going to do the same thing here. Object, expand. Always do it twice. And then just to get rid of any extra stuff, any lines that are hiding inside of these letters, what I want to do is get my magic wand, select that color, and select the inverse, and just make sure there are no extra things selected, and there's not. So at this point, we can just copy this and paste it right into LightBurn. Maybe. There we go. Now we're pasted into LightBurn, which changes the fill. I'll set it to output so we can get a better view of it. Let's ungroup it. Let's make sure these are grouped. Make sure these are grouped. And these. Now we can put this right back here in the center where we had it. And now we can resize it to the proper height and width. So I am going to want a template in LightBurn to frame this up. So let me just make a rectangle, and we're going to make it 30 and 430. Then we're going to make another rectangle, make it 310 and 30. Then we're going to center these up. Then I'm just going to go ahead and weld these together. And there is our template that we can use to frame up the cross, and then we can also use it to resize these three items. And I forgot to lock my aspect ratio. Alright, aspect ratio is locked. At that point, we can just start resizing. I did forget to group these. Should have done that. And just like that, we're resized, we're within this template, and I think everything looks good. Now we can move over to the laser and frame this up. First thing I want you to see, guys, is the difference in focal height between the lenses. Alright, so let's look at these three focal sticks. The orange one is a 200mm lens. The silver is a 300mm lens. And the red is the 400mm lens. So that's why I have this tower extension on this laser, so that I have enough room to get something underneath that lens on that with that 400mm lens. So when I put this cross down, I'm just using this some jig bars, because the cross has space for a piece of rebar to go through it for some extra support. So I just have a couple jig bars down just to hold it level. Then I grab the 400mm lens focal stick, pop it underneath there. See that we are in focus. So now you get an idea of how long that focal stick is. And if you want to know exactly, it is 668 millimeters. So 668 millimeters. So we are in focus. Now we can frame. Just going to select our tool layer, tool path, hit frame. Alright, I turned off the overhead garage light, so it should show the framing a little bit better. You can see that it's pretty well framed. I think it's going to look good. I don't have a setting for this. What I want to do is take the paint off and then leave a dark mark behind so it contrasts against the white. So I'm just going to run basic cleaning pass over it enough times to get the paint off. I need to turn on my FUME extraction. I'm going to set two fans up to direct the smoke into the fume extraction hood. I know it's going to create a lot of smoke. And let me set this to the cleaning pass. 3000, power of 35, frequency 70, Q pulse 500, line interval 0.032. That's going to be a little tight for this 400 lens. That's for a 200 lens, but I'm going to go ahead and run it so it'll just end up taking the paint off a little bit quicker. It's not high power, so it's not going to do too much to the metal as far as removing any depth. I should have filled shapes individually, and it's would have made this go much quicker. So I'm going to stop this after the first pass, set it to fill shapes individually, and then run 2 more. Okay, now it's looking pretty good. So what I want to do is probably increase the power and run the cleaning pass again. Alright folks, it is done. Nice black mark on this steel. I wasn't sure what kind of steel would be underneath it, but it is a nice black mark. You can see that, definitely. So I'm going to hit it with some clear coat so it'll stand out in the elements, but this is serving as a temporary grave marker until they get their gravestone in. But I think they'll be happy. The W gives it the illusion that by centering it, that the rest is a little off center. I could have just done the W separate as a separate individual piece of text and shrunk it down a little bit. That's something to keep in mind for next time. But overall, the black mark definitely looks good. It definitely stands out. So hopefully the customer will be happy. If not, I'll make it right as always. But definitely good black mark on steel. The whole garage started to smell like powder coat, so I was wearing my mask. I just took it off to film this outro, so be sure and wear your personal protective equipment And I was watching the engrave through the monitor, so I didn't have to have the eyes right on the camera, or right on the laser. I'll let the camera take the hit instead of my eyeballs. And I did want to point out that I did burn to learn today. I had no idea what settings I would need to take this paint off, but figured it out. Got the paint off without engraving the metal, and then just turned the metal dark with an anneal, and it looks pretty good. So thank you for watching. Please check out the Patreon. You can join as a free member, and then if you like what you see, you can always upgrade later. Check out the Laser Makers Realm Discord. Check out my Facebook. It's facebook.com/PatrickAllenMoore, ALAN. And that's going to be it for today. I appreciate you watching, and as always, have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.